I just pressed the let's go live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started, because we've got some business to attend to. I know it's Friday, and like most of the news is shut off for the weekend. Everybody's checked out, including the president, the vice president, Congress, most people. But we're not. We've got business to attend to. And so we are going to get into it as soon as we can confirm that the streams are working all across the interwebs. And we are, of course, on Rumble. We're on Twitter. We are on Facebook. And let's see if the tweet is working. Hey, the Twitter is working. That's awesome. So what I'm going to do is, if you're on Twitter, you can see that we're broadcasting right there. And we're going to go ahead and just give that, you can give that a tweet if you're over there. Give it a retweet if you're following us on Twitter. It's working. Tweaks in the house. Paul says it's live. We're going to try to start, seeing if Twitter is kind of a good place to simulcast. But the word is, it's working. So let's get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we've got some interesting things to talk about. The headline on the thumbnail, of course, is Maniacs. And right next to him, we've got the World Economic Forum founder, Klaus Schwab, that we're going to talk about. Before we get to him, we've got another maniac to talk about. This is the Colorado alleged shooter that we're going to talk about. You can see the mugshot. This is the mugshot from when it's going to be a difficult day. The defendant, Mix Anderson Lee Aldrich, he was arrested. He got indicted. We're going to take a look at the criminal charges and the entire court docket for Mix Anderson Lee Aldrich, the defendant. And we also have a photograph of him from court. So he's got his cases proceeding forward, and we've got some interesting documents to take a look at, a whole bunch of them. Request for sealing. We've got a notice of invocation, which is basically sort of a notice of his defenses. The public defender also wants to have an identification hearing to sort of say, this guy might not even be who, you say he is. Got that. We've got an order to seal the original search warrant that was granted by the judge, and the defense is like, hey, why is all of this sealed? I'd like to actually see this, and so the defense is now filing a motion to unseal. So there's some actually pretty interesting stuff in this one, and we are going to get into that in the first segment for the defendant, Mix Anderson. We're also going to take a look at the World Economic Forum. There's this very interesting interview that took place in Thailand between Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, and some journalist in APEC, which I think was this Asian Pacific economic thing that happened. And Klaus Schwab, he said that, China's a great model for the future of the world. And we were all sitting here going, wait a minute, what? Because if you look at China, there happens to be, seems like a little bit of unrest going on over there. They're still dealing with COVID. CBS was reporting that there are some, ongoing protests that they haven't been able to shut down. Labor issues, 30,000 cases for the first time in China, daily numbers. There are riots taking place. You can see some of these very convenient GIFs that have been attached to our mind map. And we're going to look at all of them, but they are throwing barricades. They are using, pipes or pillars or whatever, pieces of metal and rebar or whatever to beat back against the Chinese COVID Nazis who are trying to take over their livelihood. They're also building what looks like these gigantic quarantine camps. You can see those there. So all of these videos are spreading around on Twitter, and we're asking ourselves, is that the world that we want to live in? Because that's what Klaus Schwab and those goons at the World Economic Forum are apparently creating for us. So we've got all of that. Back home, Joe Biden knows that he can't quarantine us all unless he takes our guns away. And so he's going to be working really hard on that the next 2 years, even though it's a lame duck session. Yeah. Guns are so bad that you can't have them, and there's really no good reason for them at all. Like, what kind of a person would want one? Except for Hunter Biden, who actually is basically a gun criminal who hasn't been indicted yet. So we'll take a look at that all in the second segment. And then, my friends, we are going to drop off on the non-free speech platforms for our third and final segment, which means we'll say goodbye to YouTube, we'll say goodbye to the Facebook, and we'll just jump in and we'll finish this one up on Locals, on Rumble, and on Twitter. All right, so this will be our third segment. If you want to follow along, you're going to have to find us over there. But we're going to talk about this Attorney General letter that came out to Maricopa County. Of course, this is all election stuff, which is why we are abandoning ship on the YouTubes. But we got Kari Lake. She just filed a lawsuit. We're going to go through that one. And Abe Hamadeh as well also filed a lawsuit. So we'll talk about those on the free speech platforms where we can be a little bit more free. Otherwise, my friends, we'll leave it here on that third segment. But as you can see, boy, oh boy, we've got a lot to get to today. And if you want to be a part of our community, the best place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And we got some people on Twitter. We got 21 people on Twitter at the moment. So shout out to Paul Mino. And, we're sort of, diversifying the live streams. We've got C. Rose. We've got John McGarvey. Dave V1's in the house. Shout outs to Tweak. We've got MJBWWW. Sesparza, Resident Bedoin. Many others are chatting away at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I forgot to say hello to our friend in the YouTube chat called God-Sized Hole, who's in the chat. There he is. God-Sized Hole. Hello there, God-Sized Hole. It's a big one. Glad that you're here with us today. And so, as you can see, we've got a lot to get to. We're going to scroll back up and we're going to get queued up for our very first segment on the day. Let's get right to it, shall we? Questions, a lot of them, for the alleged Colorado shooter, Mix Anderson Lee Aldrich. You see, this is the mugshot of the 22-year-old who has been charged with crimes for allegedly shooting and killing a bunch of people in Colorado at a club called Club Q. We're going to talk about that. There's more background on this. This is the mugshot that was released, and there's a good story that we'll go through saying that he was sort of stopped by some very heroic people who jumped on him and ended the whole ordeal. But we also have a court photo, and he's sort of showing up. You can see he is in a protective outfit. He is looking like he's very slopped over, maybe drugged up. Who knows what's going on with him, but not looking so good. We're going to take a look at that to get us started. Before we go through the docket, because there was some interesting stuff that came out. There was a request for sealing. There was an order to seal. The judge actually approved the sealing. There was a motion to unseal. The defense says, we want some information about this case. And we're going to also look at what the defense lawyers are already submitting. A notice of their defenses called a notice of invocation. And they're also asking for an identification hearing, basically a non-testimonial process, so that people can say that was him, because the defense is saying they haven't proven that yet. And we'll take a look at how that works. But first, this was the mugshot. We have some information that came out over from the Epoch Times about this story. They tell us the suspect accused of shooting 5 people at a gay nightclub in Colorado appeared in court this week. We saw the photograph of that. He faces 5 counts, first-degree murder, 5 charges committing bias-motivated crime at the Club Q nightclub. 17 others got gunshot wounds. Statement on Monday, Colorado Springs Police Department said that a photograph of Aldrich was not available because he remained in custody at a local hospital, and he was also injured in the shooting. But of course, we just looked at that photo, and he doesn't look so good. Now, the pictures show Aldrich wearing a white, bright yellow vest as he looks into the camera. Suspect's face and neck can be seen to have bright purple and black bruises, runs down his ear, runs down his neck. We also saw the photograph of him slumped over in the chair. Unclear how the suspect sustained the injuries to his face and neck. It could have been from the people who stopped him from the shooting. But police on Monday revealed he was taken down by 2 heroic bystanders during the shooting. In a statement, officials named the 2 individuals. They were Thomas James and Richard Fierro, decorated Army veteran. Their exact actions are part of the investigation, so they can't discuss what happened. But apparently they were there and they stopped him. Fierro told the New York Times he'd been at the club with his wife, daughter, and friends on Saturday when gunfire broke out, prompting him to draw on his military experience, attack the gunman, tackle him, 45 years old. Didn't know what to do, just went to combat mode and took him down. Now, he also had a court appearance, and he is using the non-binary pronouns they and them, also using the title MX, which we will talk about shortly. So that's some background on that. We've got the court photograph, which was taken and published over by the New York Post. And here's what they had for us. Colorado suspect Anderson Lee Aldrich told family they wanted to be the next mass killer, right? So this is the photograph of the defendant in custody. New York Post had a little bit more for us on this one. They said that the family told the family they wanted to be the next mass killer, right? Which is kind of an insane thing. Said that he flew into a rage, threatened to kill their grandparents back in 2021. The incident ended when SWAT showed up They went to the home more than a year after this shooting took place. 2021 bomb threat incident under seal, also not clear if the charges were dismissed. So again, under seal, like a lot of this stuff is under seal. We're going to see again, this new case is currently under seal. Advocates are questioning why Aldrich had access to deadly weapons after the arrest. That's a good question. Colorado red flag laws, which they already have on the books, may have removed guns that were in their possession. He identifies as non-binary, which of course we'll take a look at. So there's a closer up of the photograph that they have. The caption says, that was from the El Paso County District Court. Grandmother told cops that Aldrich said that they were, quote, going to be the next mass killer, and he has been collecting ammunition, firearms, bulletproof body armor, and storing it in the basement of the residence. Yeah, all right. So, gosh, none of that. I don't see anywhere in here extremist MAGA Republicans, but okay, let's keep going because there's a lot more to this. Now, we're going to get into the actual docket, the court docket, because you can see there's a lot of activity here. Look, we've got from 11/21 all the way to 11/23. That's just a couple days, and we've got a lot of blue items that we will review and see exactly what's going on. But first, we've got to talk about some gold. Of course, we know, my friends, that if you've got an IRA, a 401k, or a savings account, things are scary out there. The Biden administration has printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined. The national debt hit a record $30 trillion. Inflation is the highest we've seen since 1982. It is only a matter of time before the house of cards comes crashing down. If you have a retirement account, your money could be at serious risk. Talk to my friends at Goldco. See how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. Go to robertlikesgold.com. robertlikesgold.com. They'll give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account. That's at robertlikesgold.com. Goldco's an A+ rated Better Business Bureau business, and they're great friends of the show. So check out robertlikesgold.com. All right, my friends. And so let's take a look at the actual court docket in this defendant case. You can see this is directly from the Colorado Superior Court where the charges are. And I wanted to walk you through sort of what happened very, very quickly. We've got a request for the sealing of the warrant. We're going to take a look at that case or at that document because why does all of this need to be sealed, right? This is kind of a public case. We sort of know more or less what happened here. Why do we need all of this under wraps? Well, we'll see. We're also going to look at this notice of invocation. This is basically their notice of defenses. There's a bunch of activity about pretrial publicity and whether the media can be involved in this case. The judge has issued a couple orders about that for local news entities. And then we'll look at some of the sort of related orders from the court. But first, let's start with the request to seal because this is one of the first things that was filed, right? After all of this hit, all of this, started to unfold. The government prosecutors, so this is the state of Colorado prosecutors, the plaintiffs, you see this. They filed a request for a sealing of the arrest warrant. They don't want any of this stuff being public. So Colorado prosecutors submit this motion. They filed it basically immediately. November 21st, Colorado prosecutors say, the people ask this court to seal the arrest warrant for the following items. The criminal case report supporting the arrest warrant. So that would be sort of the police report. You also have the supporting arrest warrant affidavit. We've read through many of those on this show, right? Many of the summation. Why do you need the warrant? You've got to establish why probable cause is justified. And the people request the sealing of this document until the termination of the investigation is completed. They asked the judge for this, 11/20, by Brent Nelson, Deputy District Attorney. This goes over to the court. The court turns around and says, absolutely no problem. Judge responds November 20th, 7:12 a.m. Magistrate Judge Phillips says, no problem, happy to do it. The court, having reviewed the documents submitted in support of the arrest warrant, hereby enters an order that the arrest warrant affidavit and the application for the arrest warrant, to include the affidavit and all of that, be sealed. It's all sealed until the investigation in this case is completed upon further order by the court. We want that stuff. We want to see what the affidavit is. We want to see what the case file says because there's probably some good stuff in there, but they don't want to turn that over. Now, as you can see, when we go through this sort of list, those were the first two items that were filed on 11/21, right? The request for the sealing of the arrest warrant and then the court order. Right after that, you see the next day, the defense, they file this, a motion to unseal that stuff. They're saying, what? That's all sealed. Can we get that unsealed, please? We'd like to take a look at what's in there. And so that's what this looks like. The defense lawyers for Mix Anderson Aldrich submitted this one. Motion to unseal the arrest warrant and the affidavit to the defense. They're saying, how can we properly defend our client if we can't even see what the evidence is? They say Mix Aldrich, footnote 1 says, Anderson Aldrich is non-binary, by the way. They use they, them pronouns, and for the purposes of all formal filings will be addressed as Mix Aldrich. That's it. Okay. It says, on November 19, 2022, Mix Aldrich was arrested and taken into custody for first-degree murder. November 21, pursuant to Chief Justice Directive, which is sort of their Supreme Court, the counsel automatically elected to represent MX Aldrich as they're in custody and cannot post bond. Okay, so sort of an indigency clause. They're indigent. They can't afford a lawyer. Automatically, they're going to appoint one. Counsel, says the defense attorney, right? This is a defense lawyer writing this, says, okay, so he got charged with murder. We got appointed because we're the defense lawyers. That's all normal, but things have gotten a little bit off now. Counsel at this point normally receives at a minimum the affidavit, which provides the basis for the arrest and the detention of the defendant. This information is needed by lawyers for a variety of reasons, including but not limited to checking for legal conflicts about the representation, whether alternate defense counsel should instead be appointed, information regarding the alleged crime, and whether there's any immediate investigation to be completed. They're saying, we need this stuff to do our job. The district attorney filed a motion, this is the defense writing, saying prosecutors asked for the sealing of the arrest warrant, which we already read, and that was granted by the court. The sealing of the affidavit and the refusal to permit the defense to view the affidavit implicates Mix Anderson's rights to effective assistance of counsel. Yeah, it does. How can they okay, he's been charged with murder. Can I see the details of this so that I can start investigating? Do I need an investigator to come and start, preserving this or interviewing that or whatever? No idea, because the documents haven't even been turned over. Defense lawyer says, counsel is aware that in the past, prosecutors have tried to justify their argument for non-disclosure to us by stating that since charges are not filed, that the public defender's office does not yet represent the defendant. This is incorrect, they say. The state public defender shall represent as counsel without charge each indigent person who's under arrest for the charge of committing a felony, the defendant. So they're saying, yes, we do have the right to do this. And they also say, furthermore, under the Chief Justice Directive, if they are in custody and they cannot post bail, meaning Mix Anderson, all of these privileges are in effect. They write, the right to counsel obviously means the right to the effective assistance of counsel. Like, you don't get a lawyer who can't actually represent you. It's got to be effective assistance of counsel, not just counsel. No authority exists within Colorado and the rules that prevent us from getting this information. And they argue that a refusal to give us the affidavit is an unfair, unreasonable, and unjustifiable restraint on the ability of counsel to represent Mix Anderson. Therefore, Mix Anderson moves this court to unseal the affidavit only to the defense. Just give it to us. You don't have to publish it. And also impose any reasonable protective orders that you need. Signed off on by the Chief Trial Deputy, Joseph Archambault, Deputy State Public Defender. Just saying, can we just see the materials so that we can properly do our job? The government, of course, will respond to that. But that's what we have in this sort of first branch. We've got the order to seal after the request for the sealing, and then the prosecutors or the defense lawyers are asking the prosecutors to actually unseal the documents. So then in addition to that, we've got two other items that I thought were interesting. One is a notice of defenses, and the other is a request for an identification hearing. So let's take a look at both of these. The notice of invocation is as follows. People versus the state of Colorado, the people of the state of Colorado versus Anderson Aldrich. They are providing the prosecutors and the court with a notice of their defenses. This is the defense lawyer writing. They say, "Dear court, this is our notice of invocation. We are invoking all of these rights. We are notifying you that these are the things that we are investigating. Have notice. Demand also for any alleged prior waivers of privilege, signed releases, and other password information." They write, "Dear court and prosecutors, Mix Anderson Aldrich," footnote 1, non-binary, they use they them pronouns for the purposes of all filings will be addressed as Mix. They invoke the following privileges at law. 1A, all medical and psychiatric, including drug or alcohol treatment, privileges afforded to the defendant under the Colorado Constitution. Also, they want health insurance portability, all that applied to his treatment. All other privileges under Colorado law, including things that might have come from military, probation, administrative expectations, and so on. They say that Mix Aldrich explicitly revokes any previously granted waivers of privilege, privacy, confidentiality, any consent they may have given to disclosed passwords or access electronic devices, private social media accounts, right? So if this guy got, sat down immediately after the investigation, before the defense lawyers can show up, and he gives them access to everything, my password is password 123, and they get access to that, they're saying all of that's revoked. As counsel, the defense lawyers say, as we do not yet have access to complete discovery, we don't have anything actually, counsel is unaware if the government purports to have secured any waiver, because we haven't seen anything, be it express or implied, written or oral, from Mix Aldrich to gain access to any material that might be beyond their reach. They say that Mix Aldrich's experience in the criminal justice system is extremely limited. This is the defense writing. If the government obtained any type of waiver, they ask that the court order that the prosecution disclose the substance of those waivers, that if those waivers did exist, that the prosecution seal the materials, and if the prosecution has already taken those materials, provide copies of those to the court and to the defense. The defense continues, they say, to the extent that Mix Aldrich provided the government access to any device or social media accounts, we now withdraw consent. And further, they ask that the government disclose in open court the next court appearance, whether they got any passwords for social media accounts, whether the government were actually access those social media accounts, and whether there's any further litigation to address. Signed again by the same Deputy Public Defender, Trial Deputy Chief Joseph Archambault. So that's just sort of a standard list of defenses. And they're also asking for an identification hearing. So this is the final document from this docket. The defense lawyers for Mix Anderson Aldrich write that the Office of the District Attorney and other prosecutors were notified that they are representing, meaning the public defenders are representing Mix Aldrich. They said that Mix Aldrich also filed the invocation, the notice of defenses that we just read through. But now that all of that has been submitted, they say that Anderson Aldrich and their counsel provide this written demand that the government obtain the consent of their counsel before they have any contact with Mix Aldrich, right? It's sort of, we're here now, don't ever even think about talking to him, especially if it comes from collecting non-testimonial evidence, right? In other words, if they need to go get photos or, DNA or any type of evidence from him, the defense wants to know about it, and they're making a demand that they are on record telling the judge this. They say that he was arrested, and on November 21st, the defense public defenders came in, and they jumped on the case November 21st. On that day, Anderson Aldrich invoked their right to silence and their right to counsel under the U.S. Constitution, and Mix Aldrich persists in those invocations. In order to ensure that these rights are protected, the defense says that Mix Aldrich does not wish to be contacted, visited, interviewed, or questioned unless the attorneys are forewarned and present. And also, given their lack of experience in dealing with law enforcement, their age, and the seriousness of the pending offenses, Lee Aldrich declines to speak to the prosecution and law enforcement on any topic, including crimes or circumstances which the state or law enforcement may assert are unrelated for the crime in which they are in custody. Only Lee Aldrich's counsel are in a position to determine whether the subject matter law seeks to broach with him, the subject matter law enforcement seeks to broach with him is unrelated to the pending matter or not. So they're saying that if we want to talk to him for other reasons, you can't just do that. You've got to come to us and talk to us about it. We're going to be the people who decide whether or not that's sort of relevant or not. You don't get to decide that externally from his counsel. The defense continues. They say, only Lee Aldrich's counsel are in a position to determine whether the subject matter law enforcement seeks is unrelated to the pending matter or not, and only we can foreclose that contact. But should the prosecution, law enforcement, or any other governmental agent believe that contacting Aldrich without their lawyer's consent is permissible under the state, they say consent is permissible. They move the court before contacting to either do one of the following: provide notice to Aldrich's attorney, contact the undersigned counsel before seeking injunctive relief. Finally, in order to ensure that Lee Aldrich's rights are respected, the defense says they request that the court order the prosecution to advise all law enforcement agencies who come within the scope of this rule to abide by this order, and say that do not allow any jailers to go visit this guy. Signed by Megan Ring, Colorado State Public Defender Joseph Archibald. So several interesting filings there. A lot of this is pretty standard. So there wasn't much meat in here about an actual identification procedure. But all right, so that's what's going on with Aldrich. And we'll continue to see if anything new pops up. Now, what we're all been waiting for is the search warrant affidavit, the actual formal charging documents, and we haven't seen those yet. A lot of other activity, and as you can see, they are there's this whole additional slew of filings that came out here, including media requests, and more will be revealed, I'm sure, and we'll continue to follow. Thanks for liking this video wherever it is you're watching this, and we will see you on the next one. All right, and so let's jump into our second segment here, where we're talking about the World Economic Forum and this bozo who we got to, I guess, talk about, I suppose. What do we have here? Klaus Schwab and China. The World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab raises more eyebrows, as he tends to do. He was giving an interview in Thailand during APEC 2022, and he had a very interesting quote for us. He said, the world is transitioning, and we have to make sure that we can mentor people into this new world. And also, China happens to be a pretty dang good role model, and we should just follow the things that they're doing. Now, this is a full 4-minute clip of Klaus Schwab, and I do want to spend some time walking through it. But before we can understand sort of the model that he's very excited about, let's take a look at actually what's going on in China. I mean, he wants the rest of the world to sort of, consider the Chinese approach. They're very, very forward thinking, according to him and their plans. So what is actually going on over there in China? Because there seems to be a lot of unrest. CBS reporting that there is a lot of turmoil on the streets of China, saying that those COVID cases are raging out of control and that the Chinese authorities are having a difficult time keeping things orderly.
Violence erupted at the world's largest iPhone factory in China as more than 6 million people were placed on new COVID lockdowns. Crowds of workers who have been under grueling COVID restrictions clashed with authorities in hazmat suits. Some demonstrators say the protest began over a bonus pay dispute for the employees who have had to live and work in isolation through COVID outbreaks.
So you can see a lot of the unrest there. We're going to go through a bunch of that. You see different videos are now circulating all over the internet. So I want to talk through sort of each one of those. But let's get a little bit more background from Bloomberg first, because here they tell us the numbers are looking pretty bleak. According to Bloomberg, China's daily COVID tally tops 30,000 for the first time as curbs spread. Tally breaks the threshold. Beijing shoppers are panicking. Zhengzhou is largely locked down. The daily COVID infections broke 30,000 for the first time ever. 31,000 new infections on Thursday, up from Wednesday's 29,000. Capital Beijing saw infections exceed 1,800 on the daily record. They came out with a 20-point virus playbook. Explicit orders. Major cities are locking down. Apartments going down block by block. And there are other curbs on activity. You can see some photographs here of what that looks like. Schools in Beijing have been shut down. Students are switching to online learning. Anyone entering the capital is required to provide a negative PCR test. Zhangjiao, home to Apple's largest iPhone manufacturing site, will be largely locked down for 5 days starting on Friday. Order came after hundreds of workers at the plant known as, quote, iPhone City, clashed with security personnel as tensions boiled over following almost a month under tough restrictions. Elsewhere, Guangzhou won't be put under so-called static management. Local officials are addressing this. And so it does look very chaotic there in China. There's a bunch of very interesting videos that we'll take a look at here in a minute. Right after we take a look at our friends, 4 Patriots. As you know, a food shortage could be coming, even here in the United States. Experts have written about this as recently as July. Drought, inflation, new policies are putting America's food supply to the breaking point. That's why survival food is more important now than ever. And you can create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. This is not ordinary food, my friends. We're talking about good for 25 years super survival food. Hand-packed right here in family-owned facilities in the United States, giving jobs to over 200 Americans. These kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, they stack very easily. Different delicious breakfast, lunches, and dinners. Easy to make. All you have to do, boil, simmer, and serve. Less than 20 minutes, you've got a delicious meal. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com. Easy. Use code Robert to get 10% off your first purchase. Anything in the store, free shipping on orders over $97, freshness guarantee for 1 year after you order. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. You can go to 4patriots.com. Use code Robert. Start building your stockpile today. All right. And so now that we know there are serious issues in China, I want to share with you some of these videos that have been floating around the interwebs. And we've got a volume warning, so let's turn this puppy down a little bit. This is a scene outside a city in China where people are getting fed up with the COVID lockdowns and they are pushing back against the tyranny. Pretty big group. Now, the good news is they're all still wearing their masks, so at least they're not going to catch any virus particles or something. But, you know, the mask is not going to do much against a baton to the face, but it will certainly help with, I guess, air particles or something. That's just one scene. Now, this is other locations and other areas. You see, they are, you know, the stormtroopers are there in white, and the Chinese citizens have now, you know, taken up barricades. They've taken pieces of metal. They are pushing back against these little quarantine lines, right? They're literally trying to lock people into certain geographic regions. They've got concrete barriers or walls that are sort of stacked up, and big throngs of bodies are sort of stacked on the inside, and they are fighting back, demanding this stuff stop. And I'm seeing some people in the chat are saying, yeah, they're welding doors shut. They are doing all sorts of insane things. Yeah, Zach Nichols saying they're welding the door shut out there. I don't doubt that. So that was one scene. Here's another angle of this, right? They're literally throwing barricades. And in this scene, it does look like they're actually pushing the CCP Nazi stormtroopers back out. You can see the stormtroopers are in their white, and the Chinese people are pushing them back. Throwing barricades. Look at this guy. He just threw that barricade. Did you see the distance on that one? It's getting pretty serious out there. Now you can see, I mean, that one had some good distance. Let's see if we can find that. There it is. Look at this one right here. It's like a Frisbee. See that one? Watch this distance on this one. All the way, it's like a javelin. Yeah, it was amazing. Pretty amazing. So, yeah, very, very intense situations there. And you can understand why. This is another scene of Chinese camps that are apparently being built around the areas in certain cities outside of China. Here's a drone video. And it looks like these are modular, livable quarantine facilities that they're just creating in various locations to rehouse people or something. But a lot of people have some concerns about this stuff going up. And the Chinese people are very unhappy about it. Now, that is China. Okay, that is the situation on the ground, boots on the ground in China. We have to listen to this weirdo maniac who explains why we all should be indulging in that type of lifestyle, apparently. This is Klaus Schwab explaining China is a great role model for the rest of the world. Let's be just like them.
APEC this year, both the leaders meeting and also the APEC CEO summit, you just spoken at the opening panel, Professor. So how do you see we would be able to, with our capability, to carry on this kind of discussion in the right direction?
We have to define the specific elements of the global system. For example, nature and environment, climate change, and then to see what are actually the areas where we can make true progress, where we can have a real impact. I'm very glad that China is integrated into our initiative to plant 1 trillion trees in the next 10 years by making its own contribution. We have to try with a collaborative platform where we integrate the best people, the most relevant people, and then to work for progress.
Okay, 1 million trees, the best people, the most relevant people to work for progress. And this guy's just going to restructure the whole world. Nobody asked him to do any of this stuff. He's not been elected to anything. He's just some, weird global elite. Don't even have a good label for the guy other than he runs sort of what feels like a superstructure layer of power that we have talked about on this channel that I have argued has as much GDP as at least China, if not as much as at least the United States. If you sort of measure the entities that are a part of the World Economic Forum, the capital that they are responsible for, the GDP that their companies sort of churn, and you bundle it all up, and if you attributed that to the World Economic Forum, they would be on par with China. We did the math a long time ago. This guy's saying that now he's going to use that power to maneuver the world into this new era, this beautiful great reset.
Now the base has been formed, but we have to go one step further. We have to have a strategic mood. We have to construct the world of tomorrow.
Oh.
It's a systemic transformation of the world.
What? Nobody asked this guy to transform anything. A systemic transformation of the world? Is he a politician in America?
So we have to define how the world should look like, which we want to come out of this transformation period.
Earlier, we have the great narrative of so-called globalization. And everybody believe in it, and everybody think this is our shared future. Now, as the world is changing, we need to reshape again the vision, as you just said. But how to bring everybody on board?
So this is always a debate. It's between the Harvard, Oxford geniuses who think that they can micromanage the whole world with their plans and their whiteboards and their PowerPoint slides, that they can just get up there and they can singularly dictate what's good for everybody else, right? It's this communist idea that central planning is the solution versus the other people who are the tinkerers, who are the people who build stuff from the ground up. who are the actual innovators. They are the tinkerers that actually get things done. The biggest solutions in the world almost never, if ever, come from somebody in an academic research institution somewhere, right? The big solutions are from the people who invent things. They are the tinkerers. They're the people who are anti-fragile. These central planning endeavors have been tried, and they failed many times, oftentimes resulting in the deaths of millions, hundreds of millions over the years.
So is now the opinion globalization has failed and we are entering into an era of deglobalization.
We are.
I think that's wrong.
No.
Of course, we have the reshaping of certain supply chains. So for certain physical goods, we may see much more reshoring or homeshoring. In reality, the world has moved closer together because we are moving from a physical world much more in a digital world. And the digital world by nature is much more globally oriented. Now you asked how to do it.
Yes.
So they want everybody online, so you're more globally oriented, because if you're limited to your nation state and your local community, well, then you're going to care about your local community. You're not going to care about, global environmental destruction or some, big boogeyman that they're going to put in front of your face. You're not going to listen to them if you're a part of a local community, if you're not plugged into this big global superstructure. So how are they going to do that? Well, they'll keep you isolated. They'll keep you on the internet. They'll keep you petrified about everything. And what else, Klaus?
I think it needs what we feel in the World Economic Forum, a multi-stakeholder approach. It's certainly governments who have to be in the lead,
Governments leading.
Business, most of the solutions will come through innovation from business, and we have to integrate the large population. We have to mentor the population and to show through our good examples that the future requires this change, and the change at the end ultimately will be beneficial for them.
Can you believe this guy? This change is ultimately going to be necessary, and it's going to be beneficial for you. The only thing he didn't say is it's going to be very hard and you're going to hate it. He said ultimately it's going to be beneficial for you in the end, and it's going to be necessary, and we're going to take you through it whether you like it or not. It's for your own good, and it's not going to come from governments. Why? Because governments are democratic, some of them. We are allowed to participate in them. So rather than allowing the people to have a say, what are they going to do? They're going to mentor us through this. They're going to essentially coerce us into this new process because it's for our own good. Let's listen to that phrase one more time.
Homeshoring. In reality, the world has moved closer together because we are moving from a physical world much more in a digital world. And the digital world by nature is much more globally oriented. Now you asked how to do it.
Yes.
I think it needs what we feel in the World Economic Forum, a multi-stakeholder approach. It's certainly governments who have to be in the lead, but business, most of the solutions will come through innovation from business, and we have to integrate the large population. We have to
integrate everybody,
mentor the population.
Yeah, they're too stupid.
To show through our good examples that the future requires this change.
Yeah.
And the change at the end ultimately will be beneficial for them.
Future needs it, whether you like it or not. You're good. It's going to be for your own good. Okay, it's just like taking your dog to the vet, getting his nuts cut off. It's good for you. You're going to like all of it. Just sit there and take it. We'll get you a little treat and a cone for your neck when you come home.
From your perspective, how do you understand this ambition of China to have the Chinese path toward modernization and share it with the developing world?
I respect China's achievements, which are tremendous over the last over 40 years since the opening up and policy and reform policy came into action. I think it's a role model for many countries.
A role model, China.
But I think also we should leave it to each country to make its own decision what system it wants to adopt. And I think we should be very careful in imposing systems. But the Chinese model is certainly a very attractive model
Yeah, it's great.
for quite a number of countries.
Yeah, it's great. Very good for a lot of different entities out there to just adopt this totalitarian, authoritarian, communist model where they just lock you down indefinitely and you have no freedom or control at all. Great model. Klaus Schwab loves that. Would love to see that all over the place. But not, he's not going to force it on you. No, that would be crazy. He'll just sort of, mentor you into this through the corporations. Whether you like it or not, you're not going to have much of a chance. Culture changes, the economics change, the laws change later, right? Rather than starting at the government, why would you start with the government? The government's big, slow, messy. It's hard to control. The people are involved in the government. They slow you down. Go to the corporations. Work with the corporations. Get them to control, optimize for profitability. You guys will make a lot more money if the people are stupid and they just, if we can have this sort of superstructure on top of everything where we all buy from each other, we're all interconnected. We promote your news stories, we sell your books, you promote all our social media companies. There's this big, disgusting cesspool of corporate, governmental fascists who are trying to control everything, and he's very excited about it. China's great. We're very excited to spread this around throughout the world. So that's him. Now, nobody voted for this guy, but evidently he's one of the most powerful people in the world, and he thinks that all of us should be more like China. Now, in China, they are fighting back with sticks and PVC and barricades. They don't have a whole lot of weaponry over there. We do in America. We've got guns, so that type of garbage shouldn't happen here. But Joe Biden says he wants to take those guns away too. This is our president explaining why guns have no redeeming factor at all for anybody.
Red flag laws, period, just based on knowledge, not on parents saying or loved ones saying you should arrest this person now for his own sake. It's ridiculous. We got one of the first red flag laws in the state of Delaware. My son Bo is the one enforcing it. And it made a lot of difference. It saves lives. So that's number one. Number two, the idea we still allow semi-automatic weapons to be purchased is sick. It's just sick. It has no social redeeming value. Zero. None.
Not
Not a
Second
single
Amendment.
solitary rationale for it except profit for the gun manufacturer.
Can you do anything about gun laws during the lame duck, sir?
Nothing redeemable about firearms. Second Amendment's just garbage. The only thing that it's good for is gun manufacturers' profits. Wow.
Try.
What will you try and do?
I'm going to try to get rid of assault weapons.
During the lame duck?
I'm going to do it whenever I got to make that assessment as I get in.
Yikes, very loud.
Start counting the votes.
Mr. President, you said you're directly involved in.
Can you give your assessment on whether Ukraine aid will need to be topped up in the late duck?
Well, yes. Matter of fact, I just had another drawdown. I signed another drawdown of over $300 million, and there's no time. This is no time to walk away from Ukraine. Not at all. Now, we had a lot of talk in this last election about whether
You can't have guns, but they're going to send a ton of them over to Ukraine.
the team is going to continue to support Ukraine. I still believe there's enough support there that we can continue.
You're involved in the railroad
negotiations.
Can you talk about what the holdup is, Mr. President?
I can't because it's the middle of negotiations still. But
Have you been in
Are
touch
you
with the
involved?
parties again?
my team has been in touch with all.
All right, so they're talking about the rail labor union issue that might cause all sorts of additional problems for the supply chain. But that's Joe Biden. Now, he said that nobody was very interested in, or nobody should have guns. There's no redeeming factor to have a gun. Possessing a gun is outrageous, which is strange because his son, Hunter, wanted a gun and even lied about one to get one.
Truca, tonight there is movement in the Hunter Biden criminal investigation, with sources telling CBS News the FBI believes it has sufficient evidence against the president's son.
For what?
In
Guns.
past due taxes.
Sources familiar with the probe told CBS News investigators were also looking at allegations that Hunter Biden made false statements on a gun registration form and may have disposed of a gun improperly.
So it figures to be a fairly straightforward charge to prove, and it carries a significant penalty under federal law.
Of course, he has not been charged because he's daddy president's son. But very curious, Joe Biden was also asked about this by Jake Tapper. Hey, Mr. President, you know, you've got a big anti-gun policy. Why did your son try to buy one illegally?
Our reporting, CNN's reporting, and the Washington Post reporting suggests that prosecutors think they have enough to charge your son Hunter for tax crimes and a false statement about a gun purchase. Personally and politically, how do you react to that?
Well, first of all, I'm proud of my son. This is a kid who got, not a kid, he's a grown man. He got hooked on, like many families have had happen, hooked on drugs. He's overcome that. He's established a new life. He is, I'm confident that he is, what he says and does are consistent with what happens.
Can you release his records for us? We have a lot of questions for him.
And was straightforward about it. I'm proud of him. He came along and said, by the way, this thing about a gun, I didn't know anything about it, but turns out that when he made my application to purchase a gun, what happened was I guess you get asked, you get asked the question, are you on drugs, you use drugs? He said no. And he wrote about saying no in his book. So I have great confidence in my son.
Well, why did he need a gun, Joe? I mean, it was something that you said was completely irredeemable. Why did he go buy one or attempt to if it's so irredeemable? And he's the smartest man you know. That's our president explaining away the double standards that exist for his son and your son. His son's okay. He can do whatever he wants, commit a bunch of crimes, lie on gun applications. But if you even think about owning a gun, you're irredeemable. And all you care about is gun profits for gun manufacturers. All right. So you get how that goes. Now, Klaus Schwab, of course, one of the worst people ever, who is unelected and seemingly in control of the future of humanity. We'll, of course, continue to cover that. Thank you for following along as we do, hitting that like button wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll see you on the next one. All right, my friends. Now, this is where we are going to leave off. So if you are on YouTube or on Facebook, we are going to put the show to an end. We're going to go over to Rumble and over to Twitter to continue on the show. So let me drop this link to the Rumble in the chat. And if you'd like to join, that's where we're going, because we're going to be talking about the lawsuits that are taking place in Arizona. And we're not allowed to talk about some of that stuff. We're not making any statements one way or the other, but some of the words are a little bit too close for comfort on YouTube. And so we're just going to bounce and head on over to Rumble, and then also on Twitter. So we're also on Twitter. If you'd rather watch this on Twitter, then you can certainly do that on Twitter as well. Just go to my profile, which I will drop also in the chat. All right. So that is going to be it for us, my friends, on YouTube. We'll see you over on Rumble. I hope you guys have an amazing evening and a great weekend ahead, and I'll see you on the next one. And we're done.